Hey, didn't they destroy 80% of Gaza?
No, those numbers are
What
not
do you think is the percentage they destroyed?
just, and any way that you talk about it, just it depends on how you measure things. 80% is the number you get of like homes that are damaged or destroyed if you include like a single broken window. Some people go to the other
Oh,
extreme and say it's like 27% if you look at like uninhabitable homes now. What, like, there's different ways to measure it, but all I'm saying is
so
that, like, if
50,
you're gonna
50%,
I don't know,
50%.
it's a small area. You can rebuild quick. I'm just saying that if you're going to do this much damage and you're going to carry this war out so hardcore, then the blockade has to go away
Yeah,
afterwards. You can't justify having the blockade after doing this work because the whole point was to get rid of Hamas, and the blockade was there for Hamas, right? So yeah.
yeah, yeah. Two different. We're talking about blockade and also destruction in Gaza, but so 27 being the low end, 80 being the high end. What do you think is like realistically the number of places in Gaza that have been destroyed, like
I
unlivable?
can't even guess. I have no
So
idea.
between 27 and 80, let's call it 50%. Let's take the low end and
Mm-hmm.
say a third, 33%. I mean, that's like pretty devastating, right? That's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's a lot
Like
of damage.
33%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so the blockade, the stated intention from Israel is to prevent Hamas or other militant groups from getting weapons.
Mm-hmm.
But as we know, the way a blockade works is it's going to slow down the influx of food and other stuff that people need. So you said you think it's been justified. Let me, I guess, poke that a bit. It wasn't successful in preventing weapons from getting in, right? It did not succeed in its aim. And you would also agree, as the UN has stated, that the blockade has something like halved, split in, cut in half Gaza's economy over the last what is it, almost 20 years since it started in 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So given the civilian suffering that you and I acknowledge it has caused, and the fact that I think you and I would also both agree that it did not succeed at blocking weapons, why do you think it was a good idea?
Well, I mean, I'll borrow your argument from earlier, right?
Sure.
Um, what did you say? Something along the lines of like the compassion for the Palestinians has been good because maybe they would have killed even more people. While Israel would say, well, yeah, they've gotten weapons in and that's bad, but without the blockade, they would have gotten in even more weapons, right?
Mm-hmm. But what about the civilian toll? Like there was a UN report that shows, and I think this is accurate, that Gaza's economy would have been about double if it weren't for the blockade, and that obviously that's going to cause like a lot of suffering. So it's a hard equation to run, but is a country allowed to impose any amount of security policy on another country for security? Yeah, like let's take it at face value that Israel did that for security.
Mm-hmm.
Are they allowed to do whatever they want in the name of security?
Seems like it. Seems like that's what the rules of the world are right now, right? Russia's invaded Ukraine, and everybody says that was for security.
But we
Assad
don't agree.
gassed his own people, and people say that was for, yeah.
But those are not the good guys, right? We don't like
Are
what they
they?
did.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, but I'm just saying that people tend to function with the rule set that the people around them have adopted and the people that will help them have adopted. That seems to be how people function. And to expect anybody to function any way differently is just probably not going to be the case. There's probably some use Kogan, some rules where like, okay, well, you can't start raping everybody or genociding everybody. That's probably not good. But in terms of, like a blockade, the question is like, what would Hamas do given unrestricted access to being able to ship in weapons? I mean, some people say they would do nothing and they'd live in peace and harmony. I think that's probably delusional. Like Hamas hasn't done any of the current investment. All the stuff that's going in right now hasn't been used for, noble purposes. Like how many miles of tunnels they built? Where are the civilian tunnels,
Yeah. But I mean, you saying, hey, look at Bashar al-Assad and look at Putin. Like, come on, that's not a good argument to say, look, why can't Israel have the blockade? Look at Putin did, look at Bashar al-Assad. That's not fair. We don't want to look at those guys and try to copy them, right?
No, we don't. And we have the privilege of that from across the Atlantic. But if your neighbors are all of these people, and these are people that you feel want to destroy you, and in the past they tried multiple times and failed, then yeah, you wouldn't trust them, any further than you could blockade their cookies coming in, I guess.
But okay, and then so let's go.
I don't. Let me be like super clear on this, okay? The blockade, It sucks that damage is coming to civilians, but here's the issue. Here's the issue that you run into if you're Jewish, okay, or if you're Israeli, is you look to the north and you see over 300,000 Syrians are killed by Assad, okay? By chemical warfare, by chemical weapons, okay? These are Geneva Convention banned weapons. These are civilians that are being killed. It's like a trillion different fucking war crimes, okay? Like so much footage and crazy shit has come out, okay? And you're like, okay, well, holy shit, all right? Then you look okay, to the southeast at the end of the Arabian Peninsula or whatever, and you've got Yemen going on. You've got Gaza. UN's been complaining for 7 months about mass starvation. The number of starvation deaths is like somewhere between 20 and 0. Okay, then you look at Yemen, where I think the UN's children's food program has said like anywhere from like around 50,000 children have died due to malnutrition or starvation. Okay. Nobody seems to be doing anything about them. Nobody seems to be helping any of those people. You've got Iran over to your east. You've got Hezbollah up there to the north. You've got everything going on to your south in Africa and all that. It's like, okay, well, holy shit, everything's fucked here. And then the rest of the world looks at you and they're like, listen, you need to let go of the blockade and let Hamas do what they want. And if they're really bad to you, we'll come and help. Israel's like, yeah, I'm sure you'll be down here to help us if something goes wrong. So that's the Israeli perspective. Now, is the situation tragic for the people living in Gaza? Absolutely. But damn, if you're Israeli, are you about to give up your only nation that you formed, from fucking Holocaust survivors to say like, fuck it, let's roll the dice on these people over here, and hopefully they won't turn into another Houthi, another Hezbollah, another Hamas.
Let's get into the weeds a little bit on the blockade. You mentioned cookies. Let's go with that. You debated Omar Badar, is that his name?
Yeah.
On, I forget whose show.
Breaking Points.
And Breaking Points. Breaking Points?
With Ryan
Something
Graham,
like
I
that.
think, yeah.
So you were saying that the reason why the blockade stopped cookies from coming in is because Hamas was known to use sugar and fertilizer and other stuff as part of their fuel for rockets.
I think the argument is that the blockade is only done as a form of collective punishment. And then an example that people like to go to are cookies were blockaded. And my response to that, without having dug like super extensively into it, I know that fertilizer and sugar is used to make they were called Cassim rockets, and I think in the 2000s when they made them. They use more sophisticated stuff now. And I know that people in Syria have videos showing them. There was a CNN interview with a guy who was showing you how to mix sugar and fertilizer to make rocket stuff. And he said
you said they're using more sophisticated stuff now.
They've got more sophisticated weaponry now than just these really shitty crude mixes.
So why would they block sugar now?
Well, so that's the thing. I did more digging into this afterwards because now I was curious for the fact of the matter. And I'm like, okay, well, what the fuck was cookies were never on an official blockade list anywhere. And sugar wasn't on a blockade list officially anywhere. I think some goods got blocked from different countries for different reasons. One is because they didn't know who it was coming from, or they didn't trust whatever the supplier. But I don't think there was ever a broad cookie ban. I couldn't find any information to even back that up. So, yeah. But the main point that me and Badar were fighting on, the cookie thing came up, but it was just, his point was just that Israel's just blockading stuff because they're big meanies. And my point was, well, there's probably a reason why they blockade this stuff. For the cookie thing, maybe it had to do with the sugar content. But they didn't even ban sugar. I don't think they even banned cookies.
Well,
so yeah.
Hold on. It didn't have to do with the sugar content because you said that they use new types of rockets.
Well, the blockading stuff that he was talking about was I think the cookie accusation, was it 2008? That wasn't recent. Where this accusation came from was over a decade ago. I think maybe over 15 years ago. Or because the blockade started, I think it was 2005, right? 2005, 2006, after Hamas take over and kicking out of Fatah.
So okay, so maybe both these claims are kind of obsolete.
Wait, hold on. Let me be super clear. People misunderstand this. The debate is not about cookies, and the debate is not about cookie bans. The debate is whether the blockade exists because Israel are big bad mean guys, or whether it exists because of security reasons. Right? That's what both sides claim. And the truth, I think, is probably more on the security side than just they're being big jerks and they just want to make the lives of Palestinians worthless. But
there's a middle ground though, right? The middle ground would be that Israel has the blockade fundamentally to prevent Hamas, etc., from getting weapons. But the middle ground answer is, and in doing so, Israel oversteps and they take security precautions that go beyond what's pragmatically helpful for their security and result meaningfully more in Palestinian suffering than in Israeli security. I haven't done the analysis, but I'm just saying that's one of my problems with the Israel-Palestine thing is all of these thousands of arguments become binaries. It's
yes.
The IDF is either trying, the pro-Israel, they're trying to defend themselves, or no, Israel is this evil state. And it's Israel is a country. How do you say, we don't say America is good or bad. It's a fucking country, and America does bad shit and they do good shit. Uh-huh. You can't call a person good or bad. You can't call a country so. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. If the argument was the blockade exists for security reasons, but I bet there are times when Israel maybe leans a little bit too hard into it as some kind of form of retribution or whatever. That might be true. There might be an argument to be had there, but like you said, it's very, very, very binary.
Well, so let's strip away the binary part and let's agree that, look, if Israel was blocking cookies and this was past 2000, whatever, once they stopped using the
Casma
what's it
rockets.
called? Casma rockets, then we could say, gee, or like like, why are they blocking this stuff? Like,
But again, I don't even know
list.
if they did. But then if they did, and this is why it's so important to get more than just news from headlines or even news from a short article.
So I'm looking at the, I don't know if this is a reliable source, the partial list of items prohibited into Gaza Strip. This is from 2010. So you have like sage, cardamom, cumin, all these spices, and then you have chocolate, nutmeg.
Yeah, that list is not. That's not. I don't think that's real. Where are you reading that from? Don't say The Intercept or the Middle East Observer. I think is the other meme.
NormanFinkelstein.com. Just kidding. It's a Geisha Legal Center for Freedom of Movement.
Oh. You could send it to me and I could go over it. I've seen some lists before, but the reality is there wasn't an official list. I don't think ever. Like that was just never the case. Like, so some people tried to like guess.
So, but what about potato? And by the way, the cookie thing, like so I think what you're saying is like that's not a good point to argue one way or the other, right? It's not worthwhile. The cookie argument is not a worthwhile point to argue, right?
The point is that if you want to say there are retributive blockades or whatever, like find the item being blockaded and then we'll ask like, well, why the fuck is Israel blockading it? What's the reason they've given?
Chips? How about potato chips?
Did they even blockade those?
Didn't you say they did?
I don't think I did. I don't think I've ever brought up. I think potato chips are another one that gets brought up, but I don't think they ever blockaded those. And if they did, this is like my number one. This is my easiest way to figure out if somebody is like being bad faith in conversation or not, because I can do this for both sides of every single thing for this conflict, is when somebody brings up, well, what about this thing? You ask them, well, why do you think they did that thing? What did they say? And if they don't even know what the other side's reason is for it, well, it's like, okay, well, fuck you. You haven't even looked at what they've said. Why am I going to tell? I'm not going to give you the answer. I don't think potato chips are ever officially banned. But if they were, I'd be curious. What does Israel have to say about it? Maybe their excuse is bullshit. Maybe they haven't said anything about it because it's not true. Or maybe, I'd go and look for it.
But sorry, I don't mean to dwell on this point. I'm going to move on from it in a second. I want to make sure I understand you. The idea that Israel blocked cookies. What's our conclusion there? We're saying that they never did.
The point was whether they did it retributively or not. And my point would be, my guess would be that if they were blocking things like cookies, it's probably because they were worried that the contents or the destination or the where these things were coming from contained things that were being used to build it. That'd be my guess, right? Now, maybe it was retributive, but show me this. Show me like a state. And you don't have to show me like them saying like, we're doing this because fuck Palestinians, okay? But maybe you can show me them making a statement where like, we weren't really sure what hurt them, so, fuck it, we banned all these products. Or maybe they were saying something like, we actually feel like they're using these cookies to build rockets, but then like the department of whatever put out a statement like, actually, there's no evidence of this. Like, we don't even know if they're using these to build rockets. Like, that's just a bullshit statement, right? There are ways you could dispute it, but like, you have to show something,
You're right. Well, I would say, so yeah, I'm going to drop it because I when I heard that, I was like, oh, damn. If they're currently if they're currently right now blocking cookies, and we know that Hamas is not using sugar as rocket fuel, then we could say, okay, maybe Israel is doing something they don't need to be doing, and that thing is hurting Palestinians unnecessarily.
Sure, yeah, potentially, yeah.
But we don't know that. So in your, you wrote up this long document. I don't know if it was before or after your Finkelstein debate. Was it before or after? Was it? A long Israel document, and it referenced the block.
Oh, it's probably the notes that I used going into my Finkelstein debate. I did a lot of prep for that.
And there was a very short piece on the blockade, and you linked to this article by Coleman Hughes in his Substack. And the article, and the Coleman Hughes says, hey, I read Finkelstein's book. It says that Gazans are suffering. And then Coleman Hughes says, but I looked into the data, and the mortality rate and the infant mortality rate and the life expectancy are all average. So therefore, Finkelstein is wrong. People are not suffering. And I read that, and I'm like, oh, come on, that's such a shitty argument. Like, you and I know that the suffering of a people, whether it's in Yemen, Gaza, whatever, can't be fully summarized by 3 data points, right?
Well, which data points do you want to use?
I don't know, but more than that, I'm just saying, like, that
question, it's a response to a shitty argument that Finkelstein gave, because it is a bad argument that Finkelstein gives. Your argument that the Palestinians are a ruined people because of the poverty that Israel forces them to live in, that's just not true. The Palestinians are some of the most educated Arabs in the world. They've been known for that ever since UNRWA started after the first Nakba. Like, they've been known as some of the most educated. They're even in Israel proper, they're known as being a highly educated people.
Do you think it sucks to be in Gaza from the last 20 years?
Yeah, of course.
Of course, right. But
why? Why? The why
I'm
is
not
important.
I'm not even talking about why. I'm just saying, if I say it's being Gaza last 20 years sucks, and then you and Coleman Hughes say, no, you're wrong. The mortality rate is good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, come on, that doesn't mean it doesn't suck.
But why does it suck?
Well, I'm saying the reason, like the cause, we can debate that, but what I'm saying is,
well, hold on, because Finkelstein says it sucks because they're poor, because all their water is destroyed, because their healthcare is because they have, that's why he says. So Coleman Hughes is responding to Finkelstein's.
40%.
What?
The unemployment rate was crazy high, has been crazy high.
Sure, and that's a thing you could point to. But the argument that Gazans or Palestinians are suffering like economically or health wise that's just not a good argument. It's not true, and that doesn't exist in the data. If you don't even know what the problem is, how can you begin to solve the problem or point towards a solution? I'm not saying that my point in refuting Finkelstein's argument there isn't to say, man, if you're a Palestinian, life is awesome. You love being a Palestinian and living in subjugation for your whole life. It just shows, in my opinion, a lack of understanding of the problem, which means you're not going to understand how to fix the problem, I would say.
Okay. So, but sorry, I'm being redundant.
Okay.
Can it be true that being in Gaza, I'm not talking about the causes. Can it be true that being in Gaza the last 20 years sucks, as evidenced by the incredibly high unemployment rate? The fact that, you can point to positives about being there, but fundamentally, like, you wouldn't want to live there.
Nope.
It's not great to be there. It kind of sucks. And so even if they're like, my point is that the point, it's like, I want to get away from these binaries you and I were talking about earlier, where it's like, oh, Finkelstein's saying that, Gaza, they're all dying. He's wrong. They're not dying. It's like, I don't know. I think Finkelstein's point mostly is that Gaza is a miserable place.
Yeah, but he doesn't know why. That's the issue.
But to try to say it's not a miserable place,
I never said it wasn't a miserable place. I just said his arguments were dog shit.
But what's the point of pointing to the mortality rates?
Because his argument is bad. Look. Do you think that Biden has cognitively slowed down?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What if I tell you Biden has a ton of health issues because it's obvious that he has brain cancer? Right. But what if we do we did like 20 MRI scans. He doesn't have brain cancer. And you tell me that. And I go, what, are you trying to say he's healthy? No, you're just saying that he doesn't have brain cancer. That's a stupid argument, right? Jewish people and the West have made a huge mistake in assuming that the only thing Arabs need is money and they'll be good to go. Just give them more money and they'll be fine. That's not true. It's humiliating. And there's been a loss of honor in the community and there's been a subjugation by another country for a long time. Money's not going to fix it. So when people talk about like, well, look at they're starving. No, they're not. Their obesity rates and everything are higher than the rest of the Middle East. They don't have any schools or education. That's not true. It's some of the most educated Arabs in the world. They have all the thing. No. The issue is they feel humiliated. They're subjugated. When you go and you talk to people in the West Bank, right? You've got issues of there were like 138 new checkpoints. You can't even drive the same way to go to another fucking village or go to work because now there's a random ass checkpoint. There's not even a guy manning it. It's just closed today. Or if you want to drive into Israel, you got to sit and wait an hour and a half checkpoint for what reason? Right. Why? You've worked here for every day for the past 2 years and now you've got to sit, right? These things are humiliating and it's a constant reminder of how much lesser you are as a person, of how little autonomy you have. You can't leave this place. Like it's a horrible feeling. But when somebody from the outside goes, oh, well, look at how sad they are because they're starving to death. No, they're not. What? They're not. That's not the issue. That's not the issue at all.
Right. So I think, your view, which I think is the rational view, is like to say both things, which is, yes, they are suffering. However, it's not to the extent that Norman Finkelstein is claiming they are.
I wouldn't even want to say to the extent because it's not even like one is better or worse. It's just a different type of issue, right?
But my problem with Coleman's article, maybe I misread it. Maybe I misread it. But my read of it, I thought he was basically dismissing the claim that life in Gaza sucks, because I thought he was saying, listen, life in Gaza doesn't suck.
Coleman, he might think that. I won't speak for him. When I've watched him talk, I think he's generally reasonable, but I don't know if I've heard him talk about that in particular. But he might think that. I don't know. I don't know if I wouldn't agree with his conclusion in that case.
Okay.
I'm just borrowing the stats and the research here, and then I verify.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So I shouldn't over-index on that.
You're good.